Hey everyone, welcome back to Rushing the Field, National College Football Podcast from NBC Sports. I'm Nicole Auerbach, joined by Joshua Perry as always. We are getting closer to the season. Talking season is just about upon us with media days. So we're going to talk to our pal and the new full-time host of Big Ten College Countdown on NBC and Peacock, Ahmed Fareed. Ahmed, hello and welcome to Rushing the Field.
What's going on, Nicole? What's going on, Joshua? I've crashed the party here. Now year number one that we had the rights to the Big Ten, Joshua and I did have a podcast, Go Big or Go Home. And it had a 13 episode run, and then it was canceled.
Limited,
and then you
limited
guys
series.
Replaced it. Yes, you guys replaced it.
It was the go home to the Go Big after the 13 episodes. But I'm glad to have you back over here. Excited to talk to you.
No, I'm pumped too. And we all did want to go home because we were all doing it from the road. And it was just like, it was a long day. And then we did the podcast. And then everyone on our crew looked at us and go, you do a podcast after we're all done? And so, now I can say, no, we don't do that actually anymore.
Yes, they would you guys would go hole off in like a little room by yourselves around
in a trailer.
11 o'clock at night. Yeah, in the trailer. Yeah.
Yes.
Good times.
Yeah.
Good times.
Those were the days.
Well, we all have evolved a little bit over 2 years. And Ahmed, we're so excited that you're going to be with us every Saturday in studio. Gets a little crazy, I will say, watching games with Joshua. It's got a lot of takes in the screening room as we're watching games. We have a lot of fun in there. But I want to start by going through your career and how we got to this point, your experience with college football, all of that. And I want to start by just reading your press release because it sounds incredibly impressive because you have done like a million things. An extremely versatile host, Fareed has already worked on many of NBC Sports' biggest events and across numerous sports and properties, including the Paris, Beijing, Tokyo, Pyeongchang, and Rio Olympics, the Paris and Beijing Paralympics, Premier League, Major League Baseball, college football, and basketball, horse racing, and more. So you've done a lot of different things.
But, I love how they ran out of momentum there with and more. They're just like, okay, and there's more that he's done here, but
et cetera, at the end. But perhaps people don't know that you are actually from Sparta, Michigan. You went to Michigan State before going to Syracuse. So I want to start there. Let's just go back to the beginning. Growing up in the state of Michigan, there's 2 Big Ten schools. It's a huge part of life as someone who lived there for college. So what are your early sports introductions? Like, how did you fall in love with sports?
It was awesome growing up in Michigan for just having that sports background, sports influence all around you, because I grew up on the west side of the state, Grand Rapids, Michigan. And so we're about an hour west of East Lansing, and we're about 2.5 hours west of Ann Arbor. So where I grew up in Sparta, it really was split. It was like half the school was Michigan State fans, half the school was Michigan fans. And now Michigan, of course, in football had been good while I was growing up in the 80s. Now you go back even farther, it was Michigan State that was dominating most of the time. So I think that's why you got the split in that part of the state. I grew up as a Michigan fan, and then I applied to colleges, and I did not get into Michigan. I got into Michigan State, and so then I stopped being a Michigan fan for a year. Went to Michigan State, loved it while I was there, got to see the basketball team and Mateen Cleaves and watch that and go to the football games. And Nick Saban was the coach back then. And so it was just going to both of those environments growing up. You realized how important this was, not only just to me, but to everyone around me, because there's 70,000, 80,000 fans at Michigan State. And then you go an hour down the road and there's 110,000 fans at the University of Michigan. And so it was not one of those things where you grow up and you're like, hey, are you going to be a college football fan? It's like, no, you grow up in Michigan. You are a college football fan. It's just a matter of which team you're rooting for. And so from that moment, my earliest memories are Ramil Robinson shooting some free throws in the NCAA championship game in '89. And so it's just like, I have been a Michigan State, college basketball, college football fan my entire life. And so now to get to do this, and Maria did obviously such a great job with you guys in studio with me, Mike Robb, and Matt Castle on the road last year, to get the opportunity now to come in studio, hang out with you, Nicole, and you, Joshua, again. I'm pumped because I just love the sport, and I know that you guys do as well. I know our whole team does. And so it's going to be a fun environment, and hopefully that translates to people watching, that how much we're enjoying watching these games along with them.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, I think it's important to be a fan of the sport that you're covering, and so that's why I'm excited every week when I get to work with all of you, because I know we all care about it. But I do think this is like one of the more interesting careers that you can get into, and I think, Nicole, you kind of found your way into it similarly to me. It's not like I was 5 years old saying like I'm going to be a football analyst. So what was your path to getting into media, and in particular sports media?
Yeah. So I remember when I was in middle school, you do those surveys and you fill out things like, what do you like? You like math? Do you like science? Okay. It's like, and they try to match you up with a career. And then at the end, you can just be like, well, what do you want to do? And I remember there were a few people in my class that wanted to be a professional athlete. And I was like, I don't know
that's what I
I'm
filled
gonna
in
do.
when we had
Yeah,
those.
a lot of people did, and only a few can be Joshua Perry and actually, live those dreams. But I remember being like, well, I don't know if I could do that, but I was like, I would love to talk about sports. I would love to be in it. There are a lot of jobs around sports, and so I remember from an early age in middle school and high school, I was like, maybe I can do something in sports broadcasting, and so I would, take the tape recorder and record my voice while there's an RBI baseball, Nintendo 8-bit game going on, and trying to get some reps in that way. And when I went to Michigan State and then transferred to Syracuse, that was the goal. Let me get into journalism. Let me get into broadcast journalism once I went to Syracuse. And then it's just the grind at that point. Then you're just trying to get any job that you can get, 150 resume tapes all around the country just to get a $15,000 a year weekend sports job at the local affiliate down the road. And so I was able to do that in Lansing, Michigan, and Norfolk, Virginia Beach, Virginia, MLB Network, then out in the Bay Area. And then it's brought me to here where I've had a chance to do a whole bunch of different things. And so people ask me all the time, it's like, how do you get to where you are? What do I got to do? And it's just like, I don't even know if you can recreate this because it's so unique to all of us. And I know, Nicole, you have a different path, and Joshua, you have a different path, but you just have to grind with it. And I feel like that's the cool thing about what we've all gotten into, is that the grind is super fun as well. And I think that's imperative, is that if you're going to do something and you're going to rise to the level of national host, I feel like you've got to be in something that you enjoy doing. It's just like, if I never made it to where I am sitting between you guys on a Saturday, I still would have been happy doing what I was doing in Lansing, Michigan, and Norfolk, Virginia, because it's just a fun job to have.
As someone who went digging and read a lot of different articles of you getting your different jobs, I found an amazing photo that we have to show you from your time in Lansing. It is incredible, baby Ahmed.
Yeah. Pre-puberty, which is amazing because I think I'm 23 or 24 right there. So which is
amazing. So this was this when you were a weekend anchor in Lansing?
Yep. This is actually
job?
This is actually my second job, because the first job I got was in Lansing at the Fox affiliate. And then 6 months in, our GM calls us into the newsroom and goes, hey, I got some bad news for you. We're shutting down operations. And so that we had to find jobs elsewhere. Luckily, right next door was the NBC affiliate with Tim Stout, who's been a staple of Michigan State athletics for several years, still the sports director there at the NBC affiliate in Lansing. And so, yeah, I jumped over there, continued the career for a year. That's Lansing Waverly High School. That basketball team was very good that year. And that's me professionally doing a stand-up with, I mean, it's really not that much different. Look at this. It's like a corded mic. Here we are 20 years later, still the same thing.
I think
but
your
now
shirt,
I can grow facial hair.
Yeah. And I think your shirt fits a little better now. This is a little baggy, a little wrinkly.
Yeah. I think that was the style. Wasn't that the style for us back in the day?
The style of the times.
Was a couple sizes too big. Yeah.
It's amazing stuff right there. When you look back, I feel like one of the fun things about this job is the journey that you were talking about and all the different stops you make, the people that you meet. Do you have a favorite memory of doing this profession?
Yeah. It's the funny thing is that you think back and all the big moments come to mind. It was like I covered a Super Bowl with the 49ers and the Ravens, and the lights go out and that becomes worldwide news, and you're like right in the middle of it. And so that's really cool that people are talking about something that not only was I covering, but I was like in the building for that. A World Series in 2014 when I was covering the San Francisco Giants and being on the field with Madison Bumgarner at the end of it. But, some of my fondest memories are just starting out there in Lansing, Michigan, in Virginia Beach, because you're with a bunch of other people that are your same age, and you're just trying to figure out this business, and you're all trying to get somewhere. And then you do. And you got friends that work at CNN or a sports regional network in Miami. And it's really cool to look around and see all the different people that you've met. And I think that's a big part of the business, is that there are so many impressive people that get into this business because they are either former champions or rise to the top level of their profession. And so I think for me, it's like, yes, the sports memories are awesome, with NBA titles and covering the Pistons one time and being in the locker room with the champagne spraying when I was in Lansing, Michigan, and Kid Rock walks by me with the trophy. I mean, those are memories that I will never forget. But it's cheesy, but it's all the people that you come in contact with along the way that become lifelong friends. And I think that's the coolest thing about this business.
Just to piggyback off this, and then because you spent so much time in baseball, I had very similar experience. So one of my internships in college was at the Cape Cod Times. So I was like a writing intern, and I got to pick whatever game I wanted to go to. But as you guys know, they would hire student broadcasters for all of the teams. So there's like 10 or 12 baseball teams. And it was like a lot of like the guys from Syracuse would go there. Like it's where I met Mike Cousins, Brian Clark. These are buddies that like we've stayed friends, and Scott Braun. So like they all went off into baseball or calling Grand Slam tennis or basically everything at NBA and college sports for ESPN. And we all met when we were like 19, and we're covering these baseball players who want to be pros, right? Who are trying to get up to the major leagues, trying to get their call up, or they're trying to get drafted. Like Chris Sale was the All-Star Game MVP that summer.
Wow.
They all got to play at Fenway for the All-Star Game, and it was like the coolest thing ever because they were like, "Oh my god, I never thought I would get to play at Fenway." That stuff really does stay with you because it's just everyone trying to figure out if they can stick, if they're good enough, like how to get better. And that was something that I was struck by too, just reading stories from you getting your different jobs, even getting to Norfolk, being like, this is my dream. Like, this is great. Like, this is just what I want to do. And I feel like the best people in this business treat every level or athlete or sport or team that they cover the same, right? It's the biggest deal because it's really important to the people that you're covering.
It matters to a lot of people. I mean, every tailgate we go to that first year, Nicole, when you were on the road a little bit, it's just like you're at Iowa, and you just realize, no matter if they're scoring 0 points per game, it's just like they're there 3 hours before the game tailgating in that parking lot. And Purdue was the same thing. What a terrible year for them last year, but it's like everyone there cares, and the place is packed, and they're making noise. And I agree because, when I was in Norfolk, Virginia, they had so many great athletes around there. Of course, Michael Vick played there. I was there a little after he left, but I was covering Tyrod Taylor in high school, and then he went on to have that great career at Virginia Tech and now a long career in the NFL. But yeah, I think some of the coolest stories I was there when, and so it's these local stories, and you see the Chris Sale before he was Chris Sale pitching in all these Major League Baseball stadiums. And so, yeah, it's just like, I'm gushing about what we do in our jobs, but it really is fun every level along the way. Because there's some kids that I come to, it's like, how do you get to the top? It's like, I don't know. Enjoy the road there, because I think those are some of your best memories.
No doubt. Now, you just mentioned being on the road, and we were out there the first year, had a ton of fun. You've been out there the last couple years. How much are you going to miss it? I feel like the essence of this sport is what you get when you are around campus, when you're outside the stadium, when you're inside the stadium. So what are you going to miss about it?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to miss Matt Castle and Mike Robbins. They were exhausting. It's just like it's like babysitting them the whole time. No, I am going to miss it because you're right. It's just like sometimes in our shows and in studio, it's like, all right, you got to remember, bring the energy here. You might be tired. It might have been a long day. You've been watching games all day. It's like, all right, come on, let's lock in. Let's bring the energy here. You don't need to worry about that when you're on the field. And 80,000 fans at Autzen Stadium are breathing down your neck. So it's just like, I will miss that. I will miss talking to the coaches and the players while I'm there, because you learn so much behind closed doors. Like, you can read everything out there. And Nicole usually does a pretty good job of getting everything out there. But then there's always that little nugget that you get that hasn't been said or you haven't heard before by talking to the players. So I will miss that. I trust that, that our team out there, I know they're going to do a great job. But with you guys, I think it's a unique opportunity to create an environment and a vibe in studio that can resonate. I mean, everyone talks about these pregame shows and postgame shows, and some of them get a little more notoriety inside the NBA than others, but there's no reason why we can't create a good environment and a fun time for 30 minutes at a time talking about college football that a lot of other people enjoy. So it's a different challenge. Yet I totally will miss being on the road with the guys and traveling all around and seeing all that stuff. But I'm excited to be with you and kind of create something new with all of us together in studio.
Yeah. And I think what's special about college football is that the best parts of it don't take itself too seriously. I think, you take the job seriously, but you don't take the sport too seriously. Like literally my favorite part of this past week was celebrating that the 2 surviving mascots of the Pop-Tart Bowl are going to Ireland for a week 0 game.
Let's go.
That was my favorite bit of news from the week. Before we I do want to get some thoughts about this Big Ten season and nationally, just some preseason thoughts, but we have to ask you about the Kentucky Derby. This was crazy. Gosh. So I was at a bar in Chicago. We were doing a little Chicago Bachelorette thing for me. So we had it on, we were watching, and I'm like, there's Ahmed. That seems Ahmed's right in the middle of the desk. What's happening here? So Mike Tirico has an allergic reaction, and you're just thrust in to anchor the Kentucky Derby coverage. Walk us through this. This must have been just an absolutely crazy experience.
So thank God I've been covering horse racing now for 6 years. When I first got to NBC, Nicole, they go, hey, we're thinking about putting you on horse racing. How much do you know about horse racing? I go, not a lot. And they go, that's perfect. And I go, that doesn't sound perfect. But they go, yeah, just be curious, ask the right questions, get to know the guys, and you'll get it along the way. It's taken a while. I'm still certainly not even close to an expert, but I've gotten more familiar with the sport as we've gone on. And so, yeah, I'm anchoring my portion of the day, which is noon to 2:30 on USA, and then we switch over and Mike comes in and I leave and I'm kind of a reporter the rest of the day. Well, when we're doing that changeover, Mike stops me and says, hey, he goes, Ahmed, I'm not feeling very good. You might have to do the show. And I'm like, do the show? Host the Kentucky Derby? That's not just any show. It's just hey, just do the show. It's that's the Kentucky Derby, 20 million people watching it at its peak. And so, my heart skips a beat because if I was going to host the Kentucky Derby, I would prepare for 3 months beforehand, learning everything about that show and what's going into it and the stories that we have. I have not done that. So I'm okay, Mike's going to be fine though, because we all know Mike. It's just he's going to be able to do it. He's going to be able to figure this out. But he couldn't that day. You talked about it, the nut allergy. And so they get in my ear. Lindsay Shanzer, who's our producer as well, says, Ahmed, you got to come back to the desk and host the show. And I've done so many shows with Lindsay that was like a comfort blanket. But it was just sit down, segment by segment, learn what's in the next segment. In the commercial break, go over with the researcher and writer and just be all right, What are we talking about next segment? Is there a name that I should know of that I'm going to butcher that will embarrass me in front of 20 million people? And it's just all right, learn that real fast. But then once it goes, and you guys probably have the same feeling, it's just once you're going, it's just it could be any show. It could be for 10,000 people. You still want to do a good job. You're still talking to the people that are with you. You don't see anyone except the camera and the crew. And so you just kind of settle in and you're all right, just do the show like you would normally.
Let's not downplay what you just said though. For folks who are trying to understand this, commercial break, you got a couple minutes and you're basically flying blind through a rundown of a very long show with a lot of elements in it. True professional. I can really appreciate what you did. And also this makes me feel good, Nicole, in case I have an allergic reaction. Ahmed can step in and he'll be good to go. I'm good.
Yeah. Carrying an around with him in all situations moving forward.
Yeah, I don't know if the same skill set applies. I could maybe I'll just be hey, Ahmed, what would Joshua say? Joshua wouldn't like it. He'd think it's bad. I think that is a good place to start.
He'd be anti mascot or something here.
Anti
what we even talk about?
Always
he's
anti
anti-cake. We talking about here? I'm sure that flavor that we're talking about. Yes, he would be.
And the crazy thing is, Lindsay has been our showrunner for Big Ten College Countdown. They do meet for months, right, to plan out that show.
Yeah, they do, and they go over all the elements. And then I know they're with Mike the 2 days before, just combing through the rundown. They have a big whiteboard behind them that has the whole show, every element in the whole rundown. They're going through it all week. And so, yeah, Mike is very aware. And, Mike, Mike doesn't even need to do that because he has a photographic memory and he remembers all this stuff. And so he could go through it, no problem. But I will say this, and I've said this a couple of times, but I want to make sure it gets out there again. So Mike is not feeling good at all. And I know it had to be a scary moment for him. He comes over when I get in the seat and he walks up. There's medical professionals over there. He walks over and comes to me, hands me his notes. He goes, hey, here's this too. And there's some more notes in here if you need it. So even in his moment of distress, it's Mike's such a good dude. good to all of us that he came over and was like, I want to make sure that Ahmed set up to succeed here. And so it's like, I got to thank Mike for that, because
Joshua
he
would
made it so
not
much
do that.
easier.
He won't.
Yeah, exactly.
No,
I would
Exactly.
hand you every single note that I had. I'm a great note taker, by the way.
That's true. He did
yeah,
very neat handwriting. Very neat handwriting.
Yeah. Well, let's not see. Well, let's not even try to go down that road, because that was traumatic enough for me. I don't need to see that happen again.
Dude, I don't want to experience that either.
So why don't we let's get to some Big Ten storylines, because we finally are getting closer to the season. 3 of us will be together in Vegas for Big Ten Media Days very soon. So we'll have a lot of content from that here on the Rushing the Field feed as well. But let's go big picture. We're heading into Media Days talking season. So you could either give me a storyline you're interested in Vegas, but also just the preseason. What throughout the Big Ten? Got 18 teams, a lot of options here. What are you most interested in this year?
So I think this is the thing that's really good for us this year, is because I think 2 years ago, I don't know you could have done this. I don't know you could have gone down every team in the Big Ten and be like, well, there's something actually super compelling about this team, and there's a storyline, and there's like an identity to this team. But I was going through every team, and I was like, all right, I got to pick one storyline, because I knew we were going to talk about this. And of course, like Ohio State, can they go back to back? It's like Penn State beefing up now. But I was like, man, you really can go down the list. And it was like, Indiana, was that a one-year wonder, or can they do it again? They've beefed up again. They got talent on the offensive side. Illinois, are they really ready to bust into the top 3 in the conference? I was like, that's a big story. Maybe. These West Coast teams, USC, it's just like Lincoln Rut. Can they figure it out? It's like they've got the talent, but can they get it rolling again? Oregon, of course, is always super compelling. Michigan with Bryce Underwood. Nico Imaliava with UCLA. So it's like, literally like almost every team up and down. I was like, there's something that you can point to, which I think beneficial for us when we're in the storytelling business to try to figure it all out. I think for me, the number one thing would be Penn State, to see if actually this is their year, because it's almost been kind of like the flow of the Big Ten. Michigan goes all in, the guys come back and they win it all. Ohio State goes all in, $20 million, they win it all. It's like, can Penn State do that? And if they don't, what does that mean for James Franklin and company? I think for me, that's probably the number one most compelling story, but there's so many to choose from this year in the Big Ten.
Yeah, it's super intriguing to me, because like you mentioned Penn State and you mentioned Illinois, and I think like the thing that's a common thread is like veteran quarterbacks, but also just like very veteran teams around them. And then we're looking at some of like the usual suspects in the Big Ten: Ohio State, Oregon, Michigan, where like they're going through a little bit of transition. They've got quarterback questions, and maybe some of their top players are not going to be around. And it's like this holistic thing of, in years past, those schools would just reload and there wouldn't be questions. But now transfer portal and how they've managed NIL, there are a lot more questions there. So I am really intrigued to see how the top part of the Big Ten looks once we get to the season.
Yeah, and it's like those Iowas and Minnesotas and the Michigan States, with Jonathan Smith. I mean, how much trouble do they give the upper echelon teams? That's going to be a big part of the story. And so it's just like I'm pumped, because I know we have a lot of the teams covered this year in our primetime games. And so we'll be touching on Wisconsin, and we'll be touching on Oregon and Penn State and Ohio State. But it's like there's a story to tell with each of these teams.
There are. And like you mentioned, just there are some players we know and we're expecting a lot from. And then to Joshua's point, a lot of quarterbacks at Blue Blood programs that we just haven't seen start in college football yet. So lots of questions, lots of predictions that could definitely be wrong. Joshua and I were wrong many times last year when we did CFP projections, midseason ones. I think we both picked Oregon to win it all. That didn't end up happening, of course. So let's go we're throwing darts, Ahmed. Give me like an offensive player of the year and defensive player of the year in the Big Ten.
Okay. All right. So I prepared for this as well, because with these, it's like, there's always the favorites, right? That you could easily go with. And it's like, you might be right, but that's not that compelling. So it's like a Drew Aller or a Jeremiah Smith, I think too. I think those are the top 2 names, and any quarterback with a team that does well. So, but I would look down the list a little bit, and I was like, what would be the most interesting offensive player of the year winner? And I thought quarterback, and I don't know much about him, was watching a little bit of his highlight reel at Cal, but Fernando Mendoza for Indiana. I was like, how interesting would that be? Comes over, had a good year with Cal, bad offensive line. They got some talent at wide receiver at Indiana. I was like, how interesting would that be if he comes over first year, takes over, leads the Big Ten in passing yards, they open it up. So he's my off the board pick, because I like to do this, because if I'm wrong, everyone's like, well, yeah, obviously that wasn't going to be right. But if I'm right, it's just like that guy is a genius. It's like people actually remember that.
No,
they dismiss me as crazy if it's wrong.
No, this is a great one. Yeah, like we'll clip that part and be like, look, who said it on July 10th.
Yes.
But crazy.
Yes.
No, but that's actually a really good one because I think that the Fernando Mendoza decision to go to Indiana is maybe the most underrated transfer portal move of the offseason. It wasn't talked about the way that some of these other ones were, but huge pickup. And it wasn't like the best or most established or most consistent quarterback class in the portal.
Right.
Yeah.
So I thought that was a big one. I like that.
Nicole, you and I talked to him too during the spring. And the one thing that really came across, he thought about his transfer decision like in depth. And he's also a very, very smart guy. So picking up an offense and making the right decisions in game, like those are all things that matter. I think he's going to be able to make a little bit of noise. Now, going up against a guy like Jeremiah Smith, for example, like who knows what happens there. But I actually think that is a pretty good off the board, kind of under the radar pick.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Who's got the best odds? Probably Jeremiah Smith?
Probably Jeremiah.
Okay.
I think so. And like Aller, but those running backs for Penn State too, probably.
But they'll have to split. They'll be splitting carries, right? So therefore,
one would have to emerge.
All right. What about a defensive guy? Are we sticking with Ohio State?
Well, this one's harder because everyone focuses on offense, right? We don't even really know the defensive players, right, Joshua? It's just like they're just like, hey, 50, 55. You know, it's just like
makes me sad.
He's like, oh no, is this what's going to happen on Saturdays?
I think the world knows one guy on Ohio State though.
So Caleb Downs, he's probably he's the favorite, right? So I can't pick him. I was thinking about the Penn State guys because they've had, that's just you can't pick the favorite.
Yeah, off the board. Off the board.
You know, it's like two reasons why I can't do that. But deny Dennis Sutton, I think is definitely possible. I like the defensive tackle too, Zane Durant for Penn State, a little undersized, but I think if that's part of the story of Penn State, if they have a dominant defense, I think he could be the star of that. Let me go out west though for a guy that I covered for a game in our biggest game last year, Mateo Uyunglele. I think he with the edge, he's got the size. I feel like that he's coming in a little bit under the radar, but I still think he's a projected first round pick in the NFL. I was looking at a couple of the mock drafts. Way too early mock drafts, but let me throw my dart at him because I think he's got a ton of talent. I think he came on at the end of last year and his production numbers were pretty good, and so Oregon's going to be good. So he's my dart throw on defense.
He's an alien. There are not very many guys that look like him physically, and if it all connects in terms of what he does on the field, I think he'll be right there in the running. I'll give another Indiana guy for this one. Mikael Kamara is a guy who I know a lot of people really high on. He was on finalist for the Lot Impact Trophy, which is one of the best defensive player in character and on the field. And he's going to be one of the focal points of that defense. He's going to be a centerpiece on that defensive line. I think he can make some noise.
Yeah. How about that? Indiana with a couple of guys that have been, I mean, it went the first time in the history of ever that has happened, but that's cool.
Yeah. I mean, to your point though, them in seeing how they respond after the best season in program history with the losingest program in college football history, like that's going to be such a compelling story. And I'm really intrigued by that. I'm excited we get to see Curt Cignetti at media days and talk to him about all of this. But that's part of the reason he won so many Coach of the Year awards, right? It's about overachieving. It's about expectations coming into the season. You know, Urban Meyer famously never won Big Ten Coach of the Year because everyone expected Ohio State to be good. Yeah. So, like, let's crystal ball that award. I know this is a hard one because you're kind of thinking, like, the narrative matters, preseason expectations matter. Like, if Illinois makes it to the CFP, that probably is enough, even though we're all talking about that as a possibility. It probably gets Bielema there, but give us a pick there for the coaching job.
Yeah, I would think they have the easiest road, right? Because it's just like, if you exceed, it's basically an exceeding expectations award wherever you are picked to be. So let me put Michigan head coach Sharon Moore in there then, because I think that very rarely do you see it's like Ohio State. It's like it's very hard to win Coach of the Year at Ohio State or at Penn State or at Michigan because you're expected to be one, and if you're not one, then it was a disappointing year. And if you are one, it's like, well, that's what you were expected to do. So let me throw him out there because I do think that if they come back, and they've been recruiting well here, not necessarily for this past year, although they got Bryce Underwood, but they've been beefing up some talent. If they exceed expectations this year, and who knows, maybe they're Michigan, they could win the whole Big Ten with a freshman quarterback. I think that their narrative could be for him because I do feel like we're in a moment of, is Sharon Moore really the guy? And I think even though he had beaten Ohio State and taken over for Jim Harbaugh admirably, even better than admirably in those games, it's like you're wondering right now, if you're a Michigan fan, is he the guy to lead us going forward? And so if he can exceed expectations, a freshman quarterback, they look dynamic once again. Let me put his name out there so I can cover all the bases depending on which team is good or not good, so I have at least a chance of winning one of these.
It's a pretty smart approach there. Just want to say real quick, Urban Meyer got jobbed by not ever winning a Coach of the Year. It took him 4 seasons to lose his first regular season Big Ten game. Neither here nor there. The James Franklin thing is super duper intriguing to me. And it's like everybody's talking about what Penn State can do, what they will do. But if they beat Oregon in the regular season and they beat Ohio State in the horseshoe in the regular season, it's going to be really compelling. Like, it'd be hard to not have him as the Coach of the Year at that point.
Narratives, right? That would be narratives of beating top 5 teams, top 10 teams.
Can he do it though? That's the thing. It's just like, I feel so bad because it's just like, I think of the NFL and like Lamar Jackson. It's just like, he's been such a great quarterback and so good. Maybe one of the best of all, definitely one of the best of all time. But it's like, I can't win in the playoffs. And there's nothing you can do about that until you actually do it. And so Penn State actually did have a little success, postseason success last year, but it's just like, but can you get over the Ohio State and the Michigans consistently? And until you do it, you haven't done it.
Yes. I think about that all the time. And like for that situation for James Franklin, he can't do anything until those 2 games on the regular season. Like, they have to win all the other games that they're supposed to win. And then you can't change the narrative and change the story until you actually get to those games and win it. It's kind of like with Ryan Day this year too.
Yes.
He has to get to the Michigan game. Again, nothing he does in the lead up to that matters. Texas doesn't matter. New quarterback, none of that stuff matters until that game. And what if Ryan Day wins that game? He kind of should get Big Ten Coach of the Year. Like, he's doing the thing that he hasn't been able to do.
It is wild though. Like, to that point, think about how we're looking at Ryan Day right now versus how we looked at Ryan Day after they lost to Oregon, after they lost to Michigan last year. And it's just like, it's a completely different thing because the narrative on him was like, really good coach, wins all the games he's supposed to, but like has not really done well in the big one. And so like, this is a huge narrative year. James Franklin, like, if he does what we think he can do, people will talk about him very differently.
Yeah. What if Ryan Day just does that though every year? He loses to Michigan every year, but wins the national championship.
I'll have a heart attack every year.
Put you in a pretzel.
Joshua, the fan, will have a heart attack every year.
That's going to be a fun experience for you, watching the Michigan-Ohio State game next to Joshua. That was
but Nicole, we're
City last year.
We're professionals.
We are
now. Not Joshua may not be, but we're professionals.
Air.
We don't root at all. Yeah,
I'm a professional on air. In the green room, I'm Meltdown City.
Meltdown is totally correct.
Big emotions.
So Ahmed, you got to do all these fun like tradition stories, like when you guys were on site. So what was the most fun, like tradition or I don't know, little bit that you guys did? Like, what was your favorite place to be, or like something you guys did with the fans or a mascot? Joshua.
I love being under the flag at Maryland. That actually was really cool and underrated, right? I would never have thought that would rise to the level of something that sticks out in my mind. Hung out with a duck in Oregon for a whole day one time, going around town, and that duck is famous, man. And like everywhere we go, we're driving. And here's the crazy thing about hanging out with a mascot all day: they don't talk. There's a lot of awkward moments. It's like you ask the duck a question, you're not getting an answer unless it's with like some sort of a gesture. So I will never forget that. I will never forget when me and Mike Robb went around to Ohio State and made a joke about the all the time, like the Ohio State University. Here we are at the. Weird things like that probably will never happen again because our bosses saw it and it was like, never do that again.
I like
but
that
those stick out. Those stick out.
They're like, we're at the library.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, those are the ones that stick out to me the most, but those are fun. Like you say, Nicole, it's like, and I love how you said it. It's like everything is sacred. College football is sacred. These traditions are sacred, but nothing is serious, right? And I think like if we can kind of give that vibe of our show, because I feel like we've done that the first 2 years we've been doing the show anyway. But that's exactly the flavor of college football, is that all this stuff is sacred, but it's not necessarily 100% serious.
Oregon was one of my favorites personally.
Yeah. Hey, we're still trying to figure that out. It's just like if you're in Oregon,
it.
Wisconsin, how do you not root a little bit for the Oregon Ducks, especially if they're better that year? But they didn't. They stayed true to the Badgers.
Mm-hmm. All right. Let's get to a Big Ten title game matchup here.
Oh,
and this one is like I think out of all the predictions that you can make, this one I think is the most difficult because there's a million iterations of how you can get here and tiebreakers and whatnot. So what are you thinking?
Yeah, I mean, like I haven't gone through the schedules, and so it's I do want to do that as we get closer to Big Ten media days, and I know you guys probably have, but if I'm just going to throw something here, I do think that this is Penn. I do feel like Penn State does it. I think they have the talent. Enough guys came back. Drew Aller, you got the quarterback, and I think he's a steadying force. And James Franklin, they won some big games at the end of last year. So I think Penn State finds themselves there. And as much as it pains me, I think Ohio State's got the machine cooking right now and rolling. And when you have arguably the best offensive player in the country with Jeremiah Smith and arguably the best defensive player in the country with Caleb Downs, and there's other talent up and down that roster, it's just like I have a hard time, even with the quarterback questions, I have a hard time thinking that they won't have a way to figure it out. So that's my game. I'm going Penn State. I'm going Ohio State.
The only thing that I want to throw in there for food for thought when you start looking at schedules is look at Illinois, because it sets up really nicely for them to be the Indiana of this year, which again, Indiana didn't play in the Big Ten championship game. So it's not like that they wouldn't make the CFP otherwise, but they're going to have some opportunity with like a super veteran team and veteran quarterback. So I can see them getting there.
I'm with
Joshua. What's your pick?
I'm going Penn State, Ohio State, but again, like you get into the weird, how do the tiebreakers go in the Big Ten, right?
Know.
Like, right. And that's the thing about it. And like, it makes it so hard to try to predict a title game matchup. I think those are the two best teams in the Big Ten this year. And so that's why I'm going with them for the title game.
Is there anyone outside? And now here I go. I'm hosting again. Is there anyone outside? So I was trying to rack my brain, like Ohio State, Penn State, Indiana's like the upstart. You're talking about Illinois is kind of like a little bit of an upstart. Of course, Oregon again. But is there anyone outside of that where you're like, you know what? This is like dark horse that actually has a chance.
This league is really hard. It's so top heavy, which I think is why it's hard to get, honestly, like in Indiana, because if you think about it, the reason Indiana did what they did, and we had so much conversation about their schedule, is because that was based on like historical trends and they weren't expected to be in that upper echelon. So I don't know if there is a team that can break through, but like, are you going to, let me guess. Washington?
I'll talk you into one. No, I'm going to talk you into this one. So Nebraska.
Ooh, okay.
Non-con, right? Like their non-con shapes up for them. They got Cincinnati, you got Akron in there. And then their first conference game is against Michigan. They get them at home. And if Bryce Underwood is playing quarterback by that point, he's a freshman. He's a young dude. I know he's electric, very talented. But that would be a tough game for him to go on the road and get a win. Probably next like biggest game is toward the end of the year. They play at Penn State, but outside of that, you got Michigan State, which is a question. Maryland's a question. Minnesota, I never doubt. I think PJ Fleck is one of the better coaches in the conference, and people don't talk about him like that. Northwestern, USC is a question mark of what they do this year. UCLA, and then they finish with Iowa. Like you could talk me into the idea that they're an 11-win team. If everything goes right, they could be an 11-win team and be in the conference championship.
So I like that one because especially you have the quarterback who got broken in last year, who had their ups and downs and like taking the big step. Here's another one. I don't know like how close to a championship game, but offensively, very interested to see in the step that they take. What about Iowa with a quarterback? Mark Gronowski coming in from South Dakota State. I don't, the weird thing is like their defense may take a step back, but we haven't seen them with a capable quarterback and a potent or even like average offense in a while. So like those teams are very interesting to me this year in terms of like closing that gap or kind of being like that. I don't mean this in a bad way, like a second tier in the Big Ten. Right. Like I think this is actually part of the reason, we talk about like CFP expansion conversations. I think it's part of the reason that the Big Ten supports a multi-AQ model, like that idea of a championship weekend to really develop like 3 through 6 in the conference versus, we always know there's 1, 2, 3, maybe 4 now, with the way that the league is built. I wonder, Ahmed, what you think, 1 year into the CFP, the 12-team era, did it work? Are there changes you would want to see? Like, are you one of the people that want to see the expansion to 16? Like, where do you stand on kind of the state of the postseason?
Yeah, I'd be okay with 12, but I don't think 12 was too many, like some people thought it would be, because I mean, we have 130 teams or whatever, and I know not every team has a chance, and the Power Four is basically what we're talking about here, but I didn't feel like 12 was too many. Now, once you get down to 16, do you start feeling like 15 and 16 really don't deserve a shot there? Probably. I'd be okay staying with 12, but I do want to say this, and like Tony Petitti hired me over at MLB Network, and so maybe I'm a little biased to any one of his ideas, but he's been a creative thinker at MLB Network. He's been a creative thinker in the Major League Baseball front office. I know it's changing some of the things that they did. I really like his idea of the automatic qualifiers and making that championship weekend like play-in weekend, making multiple games. It's like win and you're into the college football playoff. I mean, like, how cool is that? That's playoffs. It's like, we love playoffs in this country in basically every sport. I like that idea. And I do think it speaks to the point that you're making, Nicole, is that if you are team number 4, 6, 4, 5, like in that range, it's like by the last couple of weeks of the season, you still have a chance to play your way in to a college football playoff, where the way it stands right now, that's probably not the case. So I'm all for it. And I think, it's like we all want to see it play out on the field, and that's a way for it to play out on the field. It's just you win the games, you win on championship weekend, you get a chance in the college football playoff. I like that.
I don't know if Ahmed's heard me talk about this, but another thing I'm an anti-expansionist. I'm actually a retractionist. I think we should go back to 4 teams, or maybe even back to the BCS, neither here nor there. But the thing you're talking about, though, with a play-in weekend, I think it is one of the smartest ideas, not just from the fan buy-in standpoint, right, from like the team buy-in standpoint, that there's still a shot. But when you start talking about conference championship games and how people are talking about them and their interest in watching them, this creates better TV inventory in December, right? It creates things that people want to watch later in the year. And just from a conference business standpoint, that is a really, really smart move.
So, Nicole, is it going to happen? We always got to.
Right now, everyone's kind of deadlocked on this, with the Big Ten in one camp and the SEC coming out of SEC spring meetings in a different place. And so they need to agree to change something, which is part of the reason, like, I'm good with staying at 12. I think it was a good number. It kept a lot of teams alive in the hunt. They fixed the seeding issue, so you don't have to have the Boise State, Arizona State, the fact that Oregon, got screwed as the number 1 overall seed with seeding. So I think, it works. To your point, I think like there's not more than 12 teams that would have been capable of winning it all, going through those 4 games to win it. But I think that we'll have to see if someone can budge or compromise or renegotiate before December, if they're going to change it for next year. But I do think they're in different places. Like, I think, SEC administrators had been supportive of the Big Ten idea and like those benefits, but the coach is coming out so strongly against it because, especially, not wanting to add another SEC league game, but also not necessarily wanting to do an SEC Big Ten challenge. Like, some of the benefits of this where, like, if you have automatic spots you play your way into, you could take an extra loss, you could challenge, yourself a little more in the non-conference. But them not being receptive to that and seeing data that shows that at-large heavy models would like favor the SEC, because listen, that's not surprising, right? Like, you think about how many SEC teams are always ranked between like 5 and 15. So that push and the public nature of all of it, I think, really did create some sort of maybe not a fracture, but like an impasse that the 2 leagues are at. So I don't know. I don't know. If what they'll get to, but I'm with you where like I get people's fundamental problems with like saying before season starts, like, this league is twice as good or twice as deserving of spots than the other. But I do like the ability to play into the CFP and the conference championship week. And by having guaranteed spots, doesn't matter if you've had 3 or 4 losses because, you know, of what happened in September. So I don't know. I'm like kind of a little bit all over the place on the expansion stuff.
Yeah, it's like guaranteed spots, but it's not guaranteed teams, right? It's just like
True.
you still got to figure out a way which one of these 18 teams is going to play in there. And I do believe that, you know, to say we don't want it set before the season that, oh, we're going to have 4 teams from the Big Ten in or 5, but we kind of already do that, right? If you have a preseason ranking where that has 7 SEC teams, it's like no matter who wins those games, it's just like, oh, we were wrong on this team that was number 1. And this unranked team beat them, we're going to bump them into the preseason rankings. And so we don't have enough crossover non-conference to really have a good idea of like, okay, how does the SEC stack? We all can think we know, but it's just like we're not playing the games on the field. And so at that point, you're saying, well, we all believe the SEC is better. And so we'll give them more preseason top 25 teams. And by doing that, you almost guarantee that they will have more teams in the college football playoff, because no matter who wins those games, you're either winning as a top-ranked team or upsetting a top-ranked team.
It's a good point. That is the way that it works. And that's where, like, I think regardless of where this goes, because, you know, we've heard from like Brett Yormark talking about the Big 12 supporting, you know, 5 plus 11 at large spots model. And it's like, well, the Big 12 is still going to have less teams. Like even if it's AQs or at larges, you know, they're still going to be gobbled up by the SEC and Big 10 teams. So, yeah, I think unfortunately the CFP expansion debate will roll into the season and continue onward. But
we'll figure it out. We'll figure it out on our show. That is our promise to the viewer, is that we will come to a solution that everyone agrees upon. And then we will go with it. We'll put it forth.
That's right.
Yes. And famously, college football fans all agree on things and they never argue. So
yeah, exactly.
That is what, our show can help deliver that kumbaya moment for everyone who watches college football. Ahmed, we are so excited to get to spend our Saturdays with you this fall. Excited to see you at Big Ten Media Days. But thanks so much for coming and hanging out with us. It's going to be a great fall.
Guys, I'm looking forward to it. I honestly can't wait to spend the Saturdays with you guys and the whole weekend. And this is a great replacement to Go Big or Go Home. It was, you know what, the right thing happened. You know, that one had to die for this one to live, which is cool.
It went smaller and they did go home, and now is rushing the field. But so excited and grateful to have Ahmed Fareed join us. He's going to be our host for Big Ten College Countdown. You're going to see him every Saturday in studio with Joshua and myself. But for Joshua, for me, for rushing the field, thanks for listening. Thanks for hanging. We'll be back next week.